Good evening and welcome. It's Friday, it's 8 o'clock, and that means it's time for Buster's Virtual Jazz Club. Good evening and hello. Yes, that's right, we're streaming live on YouTube to infinity and beyond. So welcome to everybody all around the world who's tuned in. I've got a fantastic show lined up again tonight, but before we start, I'd just like to say a big thank you to all my regular Patreon subscribers and everyone who makes a donation on PayPal. Thanks for all your lovely messages. You can also now make a donation by Visa, individual one-off donations. And there's several options. It's very easy. Please just visit the link below on the website and you'll find out everything you need there. And on that page, you can also watch all of the past shows and see who my upcoming guests will be. And please do also click the subscribe button on the YouTube page and give us a thumbs up if you enjoy the show, as that will really help me out as well. So on to tonight's show. My guest this evening is a highly regarded pianist and keyboard player who has worked in many ensembles with some of the best jazz musicians in the world, including Andy Shepherd, Nana Vasconcelos, George Russell's Living Time Orchestra, Sarah Jane Morris, John Hall, Carla Bley and Monica Vasconcelos. He has also been musical associate with Paul McCartney on the Standing Stone and the Ecce Cormeum projects, and keyboard player and musical arranger for the Zapatistas. Originally a Cambridge organ scholar, he has played church organ on albums with Mark Ramsden and Asaf Serkis, and has published several books including Stevie Wonder, a musical guide to the classic albums, Classic Hammond Organ, and the Keyboard Handbook with Jeanette Mason. And I'm pleased to say he's here with us now, live on YouTube. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the very wonderful Mr. Steve Lodder. Hello, mate. How are you doing?
Good evening. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you for joining me on the show. Thanks for giving up your evening. And
thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure, and thank you for sharing all this lovely music. I mean, we've only got you've done so much, Steve. It's absolutely remarkable what your output. But we're just going to have a little dip into a few things and share a few things from various interesting projects that you've done. So I thought that'd be great. But I usually like to start off by saying, how's it been for the last year? I mean, what people may or may not know, we do see each other a reasonable amount as we play together in a band, don't we? The Alison Rayner Quintet. Must get that in.
Get that in somewhere.
So I know what you've been up to, but for the benefit of our listeners, what have you been up to for the last year?
That reminds me of the Ronnie Scott story to Dick Pearce. He said, show me what you've been doing recently. So
yes, I know this story.
You know the one.
Yes.
So, let's get it over very quickly. Took him in a tape of him doing the washing up.
Yeah, whistling and while he's washing up.
That's kind of been lockdown, really, isn't it? Very domestic.
I've been very online, doing learning new things online. Yeah. But I know you did just prior. I mean, I might be getting mixed up here, but I think it was just before lockdown. You bought a lovely big harpsichord, didn't you? And I know you've been playing that a lot. How's that going?
That's going fine, actually. I bought it and it was in not bad condition. It was okay, but more than I could do. So I tuned it up best I could, and then got somebody in, a really nice French woman called Anne Faye. She has a harpsichord workshop in Suffolk. Right. And she came and spent a day on it and kind of put it in pretty good shape actually now. I mean, I don't know how technical to get, but there's a normal sort of 8 foot, which is the normal octave. And then it's got some very, very, very long strings, which is an octave down called the 16 foot. And they make the instrument very long, very heavy.
Well, it's a big one. I know that. It's the biggest harpsichord I've ever seen. And it does sound fantastic, I've got to say. Yeah,
it does sound good, actually. And I love playing it. Yeah, so plenty of that during lockdown.
You did some YouTube videos, didn't you, of playing some harpsichord jazz?
I did one. I thought the world needed one of those.
It was great. It sounded amazing. So do check that out, folks. In fact, I'll put the link below so people can check that out, because that really is something. I can't ever help but playing the bass line to Superstition whenever I get near a harpsichord.
I know, yeah. And all the other 460 clavinet lines going on as well. Yeah.
Well, I can just do the bass line, that's about it. So have you been doing some writing as well? Or,
yeah, I've been doing a bit of writing. But I think the world is divided into people who found creativity easy when they stopped, and the people who didn't find creativity quite so easy. I fall into the latter category, actually. It was, I was having to rethink so much stuff education-wise. So all my teaching went online, and all my teaching is 3 days, 4 days a week. So suddenly it was like, prepare for that then. And there's no walking into a room and just making something up, It's got to be planned.
It's very time consuming, isn't it?
It's time consuming. So suddenly, it was new skills.
Yeah.
And very little time to do it, actually.
Yeah, I mean, like a lot of people, I've wasted hours trying to figure it on like Zoom settings and things like that, just to be able to do half as good a job as you used to be able to do when you just walk in the room and do it. Yeah,
absolutely.
But we wouldn't have been doing this if I hadn't got on with some of that. So, but yeah, I know you like to keep yourself going and you keep yourself busy with things like that. So, and there's been some composing as well as there. Anything coming up that you're going to be, sort of sharing?
I'm doing some writing with Philomena Campus.
Right.
She's a Sardinian singer.
Right.
And I've worked with her for a long time. But the worst thing is, of course, that you have to visit Sardinia.
Oh, that's terrible.
And its glorious beaches.
Yeah.
And it's delicious cuisine. And you have to do all that in order just to play the gig, Well, I suppose
how will you cope? Yeah.
I cope. Yeah, very easily, actually. But anyway, no, she's got a new project coming up.
Great.
Which I don't want to spill too many beans over, but just starting to write on that one. So that's good.
And you've done so many different things, and your musical talents are incredible, and you cover quite a broad range of music as well. I mean, you have you're an organ scholar at Cambridge of all things. I mean, a lot of people listening to this show definitely probably won't fully appreciate what that actually is, because playing the organ is really quite hard, isn't it? It's not easy, is it? And to do it at that level, at Cambridge of all places, I mean, that's about as high as it goes, doesn't it, for something like that? Cambridge, I mean, the level of skill, and I mean, it's quite amazing, I've got to say.
Yes, I had a few years off from organ playing, really, and just doing weddings and funerals,
right?
For people that mostly, and then I had to get serious. For a project, and I realised that, hang on, your feet is not just a ham and left foot. You've got to do both feet, kind of thing. So it's both feet, both hands. Sometimes playing independent lines, 3. So 1, 2, 3 independent lines, and that's the killer. Actually, that's the killer.
It makes drum kit look easy, I've got to say. It really does.
Yeah.
Amazing. So are you enjoying it again? So you're doing some more of that now again? You've done some more recently. So was it a bit of a, getting straight back on the horse, or is it something you kind of had to work at?
Back to weddings and funerals, really.
You're right.
So haven't been into church for a while.
And so I know you've got a fairly recent album that you had that came out just prior to lockdown, which was a solo project, I believe. So do you want to tell us a little bit about that? And we're going to play a track of that. So it's called Tied Up with Strings. Very nice.
Yes.
Title. That's the album.
Yeah, and because everybody thinks that it's it's going to have strings on it, is it? Oh, that's
string
nice.
Quartet. Yeah.
Oh, string quartet, or even a string orchestra, or whatever. But no, it's just solo piano. So that the title refers to my favourite things, Tied Up with Strings. So it's basically an album of my favourite things.
Lovely.
So there's a couple of classical tracks there as well. There's a bit of Bach,
a
bit of Bird, which I've been enjoying playing on the harpsichord.
Not Charlie Parker, you mean? William.
Doesn't yes, exactly.
Not Charlie.
Not Charlie. No.
No.
And yeah, fair number of my compositions. But it had come to that time of life where, as a piano player, you kind of work towards doing a solo album.
Right.
Because it's the toughest thing. It's the toughest thing. Keeping all the plates spinning in the air, keeping the left hand and the mid and the top and everything kind of spinning around.
Yeah.
Some people manage it very easily. I've never found it that easy, actually.
Well, it sounds like you find it easy. It sounds great. It sounds amazing.
Well,
you're saying that so playing solo is obviously there's quite a lot. It's quite a different responsibility, isn't it, from playing in a band where you're there's other musicians and things like that. So there's just basically a lot more for you to do, and then presumably a whole album of that is quite a lot to deliver, isn't it? Did you?
It is.
You found that quite a challenge then?
I did, although I kind of got out of the challenge by just saying, "Well, I'm just going to go in for 2 days." Into the studio.
Lovely.
And I'm just going to play.
Right.
So rather than spending, because you could agonize.
Yes.
Yes. It's just dreadful the way you agonize in the studio, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so I said, no, not going to do that. I mean, if there's anything glaring, but I was pretty well prepared for it. So I just went in and put them down. Just went in and played, actually.
Fantastic. And where was the studio you recorded it?
Oh, I recorded at John Hull's place, actually. You mentioned John.
Yeah.
He's got this converted granary down in Kent.
Wow.
And the room is a long, fairly low ceilinged room, but a very nice acoustic. And he's got a Yamaha Grand in there, so that was perfect.
Lovely. So the album's called Tied Up with Strings, and it features you on solo piano. And the track you've picked is Cranborne Chase. Is that? I presume that's an original, is it? I didn't know. I'm not familiar.
That's an original, yeah.
Yeah.
Just because it has that kind of chase, it's kind of got a circular kind of chord sequence that just seems to be chasing its tail all the time.
Right.
And once I came up with Chase, then I came up with Cranborne, because it's one of my favourite places to be, in Dorset.
Lovely. Well, that's good enough reason for a title, isn't it? So let's play a bit of that. We're going to play that track, and then we'll come back straight after that. So this is Cranborne Chase from Tied Up with Strings.
Okay.
Wonderful, yeah. I love that. What a beautiful ending. The way it just kind of comes to rest there at the end. Beautiful, yeah. That was Cranborne Chase, original composition by my guest Steve Lodder on his latest album, Tied Up with Strings Solo Piano. Yeah, beautiful, mate. Absolutely lovely.
Turned out right, didn't it?
It sounds great. It's smashing.
Yeah, the sound of the room worked really well. So just a great place to play, actually.
Well, you sound great on it. And I think we should just say hello. We've got a couple of people in the chat box. Hi, Peter Gore's in the house. And he asked about Philomena Campus having a CD. Have we got a CD, Steve?
There is a CD of Philomena Campus plus moi, plus Dudley Phillips on the bass.
Oh, very nice.
Plus Winston Clifford on the drums.
Very nice.
And it's here you are, look.
You've even got it. Yeah. There we go. There you go, Peter. There's another one for the collection.
So Jester of Jazz, it's called. Jester of Jazz.
Jester of
Very
Jazz.
Good it is. Very
okay,
good.
Well, they can get that. And Mary Proudlock's in the house. Hi, Mary. Lovely to see you. She came to our gig on, when was it, Steve? Last week, wasn't it?
Last Thursday, yeah.
In Cambridge, we played. We did our first gig for a long time with ARC, and it was lovely, wasn't it? And it was nice excellent. To see Mary there. What a lovely venue, the Cambridge Modern Jazz Club. They've got this, they're using the church there, aren't they? I thought it was great. I quite like playing in churches, I must admit.
I was expecting to be swimming around much more than we did, actually.
Yeah, because
particularly drum-wise, it can be problematic sometimes, to say the least. But it was no problem whatsoever.
No, lots of nice
really
carpet and soft furnished chairs instead of the pews. I think a lot of them are taking the pews out.
And an intelligent sound engineer.
And a very nice sound engineer. Yeah, that makes all the difference. Great. So at this point, I usually like to ask folks how you got started, and particularly what made you want to become a jazz musician? Was there a kind of somebody that was an influence? Was there a moment? Was there a record? Very often there's a record or something, or a gig or something like that. And is there a story there, or was it a very kind of gradual evolutionary kind of progress?
It's a gradual evolutionary. I mean, music came to me early on, so music was always there, and I knew that was what I was going to do from 7 or 8, actually.
You were very young when you started, weren't you? Yeah.
Yeah. So I remember getting this book from the library, it was the story of Peter Tchaikovsky.
Right.
And it was describing him on a rainy day, standing next to the window and feeling the music internally so strongly that he broke the glass in the window.
Gosh.
And I thought, blimey, this music is strong stuff.
Gosh. And it was in his head. He was just imagining the music.
Just from imagining the music in his head, kind of thing. He started pounding away at the window and got a bit carried away. They had to call for the glazier, presumably. But anyway.
You sure you hadn't been on the... There may be another logical explanation for that, everything that happened there.
I mean, so that was the first time I thought, hang on, there's really something in this. It's huge, this musical thing.
Yeah.
So I did the whole classical thing, and as you say, went up to Cambridge and did a degree, and And from then on, for about the next two or 3 years, I was a bit stuck in a quagmire of what to do next.
Well, sorry to interrupt, but just go back a bit. Were your parents musicians, or was it what? How? Why did you start playing an instrument? Was it just they sent you for lessons and you just happened to be good at it, or something? Was that
my mother's family had always had a piano in the house, and so they thought it was a good idea to have a piano in the house. My dad was he was one of those embarrassing people to stand next to in church because it would be like. Kind of thing, you know, it's one of those. So I'm not an ear for music whatsoever. Real shame. My mum had music in the family.
Right.
Actually, my grandmother on my dad's side, she was church organist and she played the violin. So I did both of those things actually.
Oh, that's interesting, isn't it? Yeah. Sometimes it skips a generation, doesn't it? Yeah. So you follow the classical kind of path. And I mean, you know, you're very self-deprecating, I know, but that's really something to get to study organ at Cambridge. I mean, that's it's not easy to get in on a course like that. I've got to say, you know, folks, anybody listening, that's not. You don't just turn up and do that.
Yeah. In fact, you don't study the organ there. You do your normal music degree, but what you're doing is you're being paid like I think it was £100 a year to play the organ for all the chapel services. So there's two of you, probably two organ scholars at the same time, and you share out the week between you. But basically, you're going to chapel about 4 or 5 times a week by the time you've done twice on Sunday, kind of thing.
So it's
that's a lot of music to prepare, and you'd be involved in training the choir as well.
And alongside that, you're doing a standard music degree, so that's composition. Orchestra. Was there any other playing, orchestral playing and things like that? You say you played violin as well.
Yeah, each college has its orchestra.
Yeah.
I was leader of the orchestra actually on violin, and I got to conduct the orchestra a couple of times actually, which was such amazing fun. I mean, completely scary moments, you know.
Yeah.
But I did a Vaughan Williams symphony, so that was
crikey.
I couldn't do it now, but yeah,
that's amazing.
And then of course the clarinets came in the wrong place. I do remember that. I can remember the feeling under my arms as well. Did too kind of point on it.
Was they trying to sabotage you, or was it?
No, it was a genuine mistake, and I think I held up my hand and sort of signalled bar numbers. And
did you ever twitch on your nose and you went like that, and then they took it as a cue?
Forward to bar, back of bar. Yeah.
Oh, crikey! Yeah. Wow. Well, I mean, that is quite remarkable. And so then, sorry, to catch up, then you said you felt you were in a bit of in a funk for a bit. Then where you after a while?
Well, of course, this was quite a time ago, you know, and it was rock. It was psychedelia. It was kind of thing, you know, the aftermath of all that.
So there was a lot of interesting music going on outside of your world.
Music.
Yeah, right. I see.
I was at university 69, 72.
Wow. Yeah.
Imagine the music that came out in that time.
Yeah.
Just unbelievable.
Yeah.
And I was not interested in Bill Evans. Absolutely not.
Wow. Yeah. It's funny, isn't it? Yeah.
I can remember saying to somebody, I really hate the sound of major seventh chords.
Oh, the confidence of youth, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. God, when you're 21, really. And because I was more from the rock thing, and the rock thing was more kind of bluesy sevenths than, you know.
Yeah.
For me, major sevenths were soupy, syrupy kind of parents. Dare I say it? Parents' music. You know,
right? Yes, of course. Yeah,
Friday night on Radio 2.
Yeah. So you felt the pull of the dark side, and then so you started getting so were you at what point? So you started experimenting with some other bands, or how did you get out of that?
So I got out of that by, well, there was a decision point. Having done a year's postgrad teachers training, which I didn't enjoy very much at the time, but looking back at it, it was so blooming useful.
Oh, that's right. I remember you telling me. So you did the postgrad straight after, like a teacher training. Brilliant. Yeah. Wise move. Yeah.
And then got a Mecca band job.
Right.
So I was faced with chord symbols for the first time. The band leader lent me the pad over the weekend and said, "Okay, yeah, start Monday night if you like." So there I was on Saturday and Sunday trying to figure out what all these C13 flat, what on earth does that mean?
Oh no.
So I basically had 2 days. I wouldn't say I accomplished it, but I mean I kind of had a good stab at it.
Yeah. This is not pre-internet days as well, folks. Don't forget. You can just look it up on YouTube. Yeah. Fantastic. Amazing.
I mean, I've done a bit of figured bass. I don't even know about figured bass, which is the kind of Baroque system for numbering.
But a totally different system. Yeah.
Totally different system. So I was used to the idea of a system, but as to the
but no help to you whatsoever with jazz chord symbols. No.
Not really. No.
Amazing. Anyway. So then this Mecca job. So that was basically playing sort of 5 notes a week, was it, or something like this? Playing like top 40 chart tunes and things.
For the first set, you'd be playing 50s, 60s tunes, great. 40s even, actually. Yeah. Quite nicely arranged and quite jazzy. Then by the end, you'd be playing chart hits of the time. So by this time, it's 74. I don't know, whatever the music was in 74, can't remember. It was loud.
Yeah. Loud.
I remember. So that was my first job, and I was quite happy there for a bit, for about a year, and then suddenly thought, hang on, I need to be down in London,
right?
Because this was in Nottingham,
right?
And I need to find out what's going on. So I moved down to London, and then my parents had some friends who were selling a coffee and tea shop in Hampstead.
I know this story. Yeah.
So they said, did I fancy running that as a job? Kind of thing. So not only did we run it, but we bought it. As my wife and I at the time bought it and lived upstairs in Hampstead, and it was and for a while again that was fine. And I was just doing music on the side. And then of course over the next 5 or 10 years, by this time I'm 30 maybe, and really itching to get into jazz. I don't mind major 7th chords by now. It's fine. I can play those chords. And I met up with the band, who I'm still in touch with today. Actually, a guy called Jerry Hunt answered an ad in Melody Maker.
Fantastic, yeah.
Keyboard player required.
Right, must have van and and a clean license.
Yes, no breadheads, please.
No breadheads. That was it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah. That was still around when I was getting started. That. Yeah. So let's fast forward a little bit then, because so you're working then, and at which point because you were. So how did you get into this whole scene in London, working with Andy Shepherd and that sort of?
So I was working with Carol Grimes. Has got to take a lot of credit.
Right, so she was one of your first.
She was one of my first sort of bigger gigs,
jazz gigs, right? Yeah, fantastic.
Sarah Jane Morris.
Yeah.
John Etheridge.
Of course, right.
Done a few gigs with him. In fact, he was my first abroad gig. Actually, my first gig in international. Right. We went to Madrid for a night.
And as you know, most people may or may not know, but a lot of this whole business does work on recommendation, doesn't it? So, like, once
it does
people,
hugely.
Yeah. So we've got a clip now. There's so somebody who you work with a lot around that time, and for some years it's Andy Shepherd, of course, who was you recorded many albums with him, and so now we're probably getting to the sort of late 80s, are we, with this?
We're getting to very late 80s, and what happened in 1989 was that Sirius, who are jazz promoters, rang up and said, at the last George Russell tour, the summer before, Courtney Pine and Django Bates had done it, and neither of them was available this year.
Right.
Would I be available? So I said, yeah, fine. I didn't know anything about George Russell. I didn't know the immensity of the task that was about to fall into my plate.
Or who had sat on the piano chair before with his major seventh chords.
Yeah. But anyway, so we got into rehearsals, and there was me and Andy being the new boys kind of thing. So we kind of, I guess, immediately sort of bonded over that. And
so this was prior to working with Andy Shepherd in his band.
This is prior to working with Andy Shepherd in his band.
I didn't realise that. I've got this slightly the other way round. Okay,
so
fine.
we met in the George Russell band. Yeah.
I see. Well, we've got a bit of both. So look, let's play a little clip, and well, I'll tell you what, we can flip it around. We've got the technology to do that. So let's start with some George Russell. So we've got some footage here of you guys playing with the Living Time Orchestra, George Russell's Living Time Orchestra, and Andy Shepherd's in there. And I think I'm almost certain I've spotted Ian Carr is in there on the trumpets.
Ian Carr's in there, yeah.
Bless him,
yeah.
Ian Carr, what a lovely man. Yeah. And so, do you remember when this video is this Montreux, or was this?
I'm not sure where it came from, but right. It's very early. It's 89 or 90, I think, one of the two.
So this would have come before you all that work you did with Andy. I didn't realise. Okay,
yes.
Well, let's play a clip of this. So we've got some footage here. I mean, it's a little grainy, but it's all fun. The sound is great, and so this is a track called "The African Game," and it's George Russell conducting the band, and you front and centre, obviously, and for those that are maybe not aware, George Russell. I mean, you need to know George Russell is a massively significant figure in the whole history of jazz, and the piano player, who he worked with was Bill Evans, of course. So one of the piano players.
Yeah, never heard of him.
Never heard of him. Don't like his major seventh chords. So, and here you are in that very seat with the orchestra playing this track called "The African Game." So let's just watch a bit of that. Amazing. That was George Russell with Living Time Orchestra, featuring my guest Steve Lodder on the keyboards there, and Andy Shepherd. Incredible solo from Andy Shepherd, absolutely amazing. And we're just spotting it's a mixed band of a lot of Americans, but also a lot of British jazz musicians in there.
Brits. I mean, regular names that used to be in there were Andy, Chris Biscoe, Pete Hurt, Stuart Brooks was a regular trumpet.
Ian Carr there we saw on trumpet as well.
Ian Carr, yeah. Oh, God, I'm going to miss somebody out.
Well, it's an incredible thing. I mean, there's some really intense stuff going on there. There's so much. It's incredible writing. What struck me was the sort of sense of build through all that. And Andy Shepherd's solo there was just amazing, because he didn't sort of run out of steam. And how much of it is open on those sections, or is everything struck? Because the sense of structure,
out, which is why George is going 5. And
he's counting them off. So it's a very fixed amount of
everything. Everything is scored. Everything is textured, and that's what gives you your build. So when he's talked of as a jazz composer, he's a jazz composer.
Yes,
because he makes he makes long periods of music interesting and happen and grow and grow again, kind of thing. And the soloist's job is to enhance that.
Yes, because there's all that going underneath, but it's just getting the balance, isn't it, as well, which they do so well. And it just never gets, it just takes you somewhere else where you just sort of, just at the right point, doesn't it? But what strikes me there as well is the synths, the use of the synths. It's very interesting because that you're using I mean, we can talk about this because I know. I mean, we have spoke about this on car journeys a lot. But I love that period of time. I guess we're talking the 80s, where synthesizers, they were fairly new technology. But we have spoken about this. But what strikes me is that they were treated like a new instrument. And all these sounds, it was like that's a new thing. Whereas I think people that play synths now, well, certainly a lot of the musicians that I know that use them on gigs, they tend to just use them because they're convenient and they have a piano sample, they have a Fender Rhodes sample, and they have a Hammond organ sample. And they turn up and they do the gig on that and they just use the preset. And it's like, it's just a thing that's meant to sound like a piano. Like that's the goal. Whereas I think when synths first came out, they weren't meant to sound like a piano. Obviously, they were just, and it was like there was this whole kind of exploratory point, and I guess the critics now would say that what that does is it really dates the music, doesn't it? I guess that's the kind of the flip side of that. You
can fall into that trap, yeah. But I guess it's when synths first came out, they weren't very good at imitating.
Right. There we go.
Acoustic instruments.
So you had to use them in a different way.
That's why they were used in their kind of synth context, to go wow or what, I mean, sometimes you could get something that sounded brass-like, or you could get something that sounded string-like, but there's no way that you could mistake for. But then as soon as sampling came in and sampling went on board synths, and that's when they became more imitative than creative, I think.
That's very interesting. We were just saying, I was listening to Amandla today, the Miles Davis album, and again, he that's I think where I first heard it was like, because he did the same thing, didn't he? It was very much like it was like a texture in the music, isn't it? Like a whole new texture.
Yeah.
But it kind of quite orchestral in its kind of in its sort of purpose, if you like, but just like a whole new sound.
Yeah. And nowadays you'd be lucky to see anything but a Rhodes, a clavinet, a Hammond organ, kind of
exactly,
from a keyboard player, or maybe a lead line synth to take a solo kind of thing. But
people just don't use those sounds anymore, do they? Isn't that because it sounds dated? Is it? Do you think that's? Well, it's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, but there is actually a new breed of synths around at the moment, which they kind of hark back to the old analog days. So it's done with physical modeling. So there's actually a computer model in the synth reproducing how an analog synth would have done it.
Tail wagging the dog. Yeah.
Tail wagging. Yeah, absolutely it is.
So is this sort of, do you think this is all because of this whole kind of like, vintage kind of like everything's got to be like the old days? I think there's probably more that. Yeah. I think there was something about that time though in the 80s, it's like looking forwards, isn't it? I think that's what I'm getting at. It's like when they had a new instrument and they're creating new music with it, using new sounds. It's a very sort of forward-looking approach to making music.
You could say futuristic, actually, couldn't you? Probably in that.
Yeah. Yeah, I like it. I think it seems a positive thing to me. But I guess it's not too much taste. So, but what strikes me is the writing there, the way those big block chords come in, and he's got this very orchestral sort of approach with a large ensemble like that, a lot of horns, and using the synths under that as a texture, almost like but not not a string pad, like definite sort of synth sounds.
Yeah, I mean he used synths as other people. In other words, it was only a 14-piece band, so it wasn't as big as
sounds bigger, doesn't it? Yeah,
as your big band.
Yeah,
but because of all that synth power, 2 keyboard players.
Yeah.
Using all that technology, it could sound very, very big indeed. Actually.
Amazing. Yeah, fantastic. Well, it's very interesting, and thanks for sharing that, because that's something you sent over, wasn't it? I don't think that's is that on YouTube? Can people see that? Maybe not.
I'm not sure.
So look, let's move on because time's whizzing round.
Isn't it? Crikey, look at that.
Yeah, we're used to having sort of 3.5 hour car journeys together down to Cornwall when we're on tour and things, aren't we? So I guess perhaps we should go a bit quicker than that.
Yeah. Just another 3 hours to Truro.
Where's the next services, mate? Yeah, we'll swap over. Yeah. So Andy Shepherd, I mean, that was a ride, wasn't it? I mean, you made some fantastic music and been in that band. We've got a clip here of the 606 was it a TV thing that they did? I mean, again, this was probably late 80s, is it?
It's BBC Two.
Early 90s?
Probably mid 90s.
Right.
Definitely mid 90s actually. No, that band was probably verging towards the late 90s actually.
Was it really as late as that? Yeah. And this is called the Moving Image is the band.
Moving Image is the band. And that all came about because of a commission that Andy got to write some music for an Arena series on Peter Sellers. It was a 3-part TV program in the Arena series.
Gosh.
And we basically wrote between us tracks which were then placed where they were thought appropriate. So it wasn't like you were scoring a film, that's got to be there kind of thing. It was very much take a piece and that works there, that works there kind of thing.
So they gave you free rein on the composing, and then they used it as they felt worked. We
just gave them moods. All
right.
Yeah.
And so the band is Andy Shepherd, you on the piano, Dudley Phillips on the bass, Mark Mondesi on the drums. Incredible drummer, isn't he? Yeah. Amazing. I mean, just unbelievable.
So relaxed. How do you do that and so relaxed?
Don't ask me.
Yeah, incredible. No, some very good music came out of that.
And so, and that band made a few albums, or was it because you also play with Andy Shepherd's band? Was that a different lineup with the Andy Shepherd thing?
Yeah, went through various things. It started with In Commotion,
right?
With Claude Depper, Sylvan Richardson, the bass player, and Dave Adams, who was the percussionist with George Russell. Another link up there, and that was his kind of electronic calling card, really.
Right.
And then I guess that went through the 90s, and then by the end of the 90s it moved on to guitar based, and I was kind of very much as a colorist rather than being the kind of central person, because he was writing on guitar. And John Paricelli is a very fine player.
It's not bad, is he? Yeah.
No, he's not bad. So that was really enjoyable, actually. Paul Clavis on drums, percussion. Yeah.
And so we've got this little clip though of the Moving Image band, and you're on piano. But did you use a lot of synths with Andy as well in his small bands, or was it more just a piano jazz sort of straight ahead thing?
This band was more piano. Actually.
Right, great.
I mean, either side it was synths. So In Commotion was synths, and the next band, Dancing Man and Woman, was synths as well. But quite acoustic on this one.
Fantastic. Well, let's watch a little bit of this. So we've got some footage, and this is a track called Rubbernecking. It's just a short little clip, and it features Steve on the piano, and there's a nice sort of slightly interesting kind of walking down the steps and the kind of cool jazz thing. But we come down and this is filmed live at the 606 Club, right, in Chelsea.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And in as you said, did you say the mid 90s?
Yeah, mid to late 90s,
something like that. Great, fantastic. Here we go, Rubbernecking with Moving Image band. Yeah, there we go. That was Andy Shepherd there, my guest. Steve Lodder on the piano, Dudley Phillips on the double bass, and Mark Mondesi on the drums. Live at the 606 for the BBC in the 1990s. Yeah, I mean, we can see the fun you guys were having there, playing with each other. What a great band and what a great lineup. So yeah, lots of recordings of people to check out for your work with Andy Shepherd. And if anyone's on my Patreon, they'll get the Spotify playlist. There's a couple of Andy Shepherd albums in there as well. So moving on, you've worked with so many.
Moving on from Moving Image.
Very good, nicely done.
Yeah,
I missed that. What we're going to play next is I've got Monica Vasconcelos. Is a wonderful Brazilian singer and composer, and there's a fantastic band that she's someone that you've been involved with as well for quite some time now, isn't it? And you've recorded a few things with. You've selected a track here from 2008. There's an album called High, and how did that gig come about? And how do you find playing all that Brazilian? I know you're quite an expert on Brazilian music as well as many other things, but
yeah, well,
how did you get into that?
I got into that through Monica, actually, simply through Monica. So there was a percussionist called Alan Heyman, and he was an old friend, and he was living around the corner.
Right.
And Monica had just come to this country, and she was staying with him, I think. And then there was a guitarist called Iffy Tolentino, who was also in that circle. And I was introduced to them. They were looking to do gigs. Did I fancy it? I said, I don't really know that much about Brazilian music. Well, let's show you some videos then. So they showed me lots of videos of Carnival, which of course has got nothing to do really with the kind of music that they were going to be doing, which was more what they call MPB, Música Popular Brasileira. But yeah, more of the kind of Jobim songbook type of thing. But anyway, we got going, and Monica formed a band called Noise, and we gigged for about 10 years, I suppose.
Yeah.
And when you say involved, I did get very involved with Monica, actually, so that was fun too. Went to Brazil several times, you know.
Wonderful.
Yeah, very good time.
Wonderful.
And we always wrote together, actually. I would write the music, she'd write the lyrics. And by the time High came round, Noise had kind of done its thing. And we got together with Robert Wyatt and started co-writing with him as well. So that was a fun thing to do. But this track is about a Brazilian architect called Oscar Niemeyer.
Right.
Again, futurist. Actually, this comes up quite a lot, doesn't it? Futuristic architect.
Is he one of the minimalist guys? It's all very sort of
I mean, if you think of what Brasilia looks like, that's kind of him, really.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, fantastic shapes.
Hence the title of the track.
Arquitetura.
Arquitetura.
Yeah.
And so it's dedicated to him.
Yeah.
So we're going to play this now, and again, there's some pictures on here which you provided, which are great. But if people want to check out more of your work with Monica, there's quite a lot. Again, it features on the Spotify playlist that we've set up. So, but this is from the album. It's called High, H-I-H. So don't miss that. And it's Monica Vasconcelos, and this is a track called Arquitetura.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. 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 E cabe tudo ali, na mala do meu carro. Esquadros e compasso, nanquim, papel, cigarro, o meu parangolar, arestas e tangentes, meu mundo e uns treco a mais, na minha variante. Meu coração arquiteto é fiel ao seu projeto. Eu faço casa de gente, sou mão na massa, sou mão nessa corrente. Meu coração visionário quer sonhar, com belos planos e retos, curvas no concreto. Yeah, yeah, yeah. 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 Me falta muito pouco, eu sei do essencial. Na mão vai a prancheta, na cabeça o ideal. Eu sei, não sou bonzinho, só faço minha parte. Um pouco de carinho vai pra comunidade. Meu coração é Roberto, é razão e é sentimento. Me amarro nos poliedros, eu sou Platão, sou cabelo ao vento. Meu coração vê mais graça quando vê de outro jeito. Me espera pra um bate-caixa, filosofia com cachaça. Me falta muito pouco, eu sei do essencial. Na mão vai a prancheta, na cabeça o ideal. Eu sei, não sou bonzinho, só faço minha parte. Um pouco de carinho vai pra comunidade. Meu coração é Roberto, é razão e é sentimento. Me amarro nos poliédros, filosofia com cachaça. Get it, yeah, yeah, yeah. Get it, yeah, yeah, yeah. Get it, yeah, yeah, yeah. Get it, yeah, 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 yeah. Get it, 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 yeah, 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 yeah. Get it, yeah, 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 yeah. Get it, yeah, yeah, yeah. Get it, yeah, yeah, yeah. Go split squad on. Get it, yeah, yeah.
I hope you're enjoying the show. I just want to take a moment to tell you about a new way that you can help support me do this, and that is through patreon.com. That's right, I've got an account now, so the link's below here, patreon.com Buster Birch, and if you go along to there, you can now make donations by Visa credit card, so you don't have to use PayPal if you don't want to do that. And the advantage of Patreon is that once you do it once, it will automatically deduct on a per show basis. So instead of having to fill in the forms every week, if you want to make a regular donation, then that will just automatically deduct straight to your credit card each per show. And that is hugely helpful to me because it means I know that I've got a certain amount coming in every time I do a show, and that really helps me plan ahead and keeps the viable sustainability of the show going. There's two levels of sponsorship. There's my silver and gold membership. All of my Patreon supporters will get a big thank you personally from me live on the show, and the gold member sponsors will get an additional Spotify playlist which will be sent to you each week. It's something that I'm putting together. It's personally curated by me and will feature lots more albums by the guest artists each week. So it's a great opportunity to get to know this music much better. If you're really enjoying the show and you like the little tasters that you're hearing, that's a great way to get to know this music even more and enjoy in full comfort the full sound of the full albums. Thanks very much. Back to the show. Yes, back to the show there. Back with my guest, Steve Lodder, and that featured, that last track was Monica Vasconcelos. Absolutely wonderful band and groove. I could sit and listen to that all night, Steve. That's really up my alley, that is. Do you want to just, I was commenting on the wonderful bass playing, and that's Dudley Phillips again on the bass.
Dudley Phillips again,
bass.
yeah.
Incredible.
It's funny how you sort of team up with musicians sometimes, and then you just kind of walk alongside for a bit. Then you don't see them for a while, kind of thing, and then you team up again, kind of thing. It's nice. Yeah.
And it all just slots right back in, yeah.
Yeah, and then there's Ricardo Mosca, who was an old friend of Monica's in Sao Paulo, and we recorded that in Sao Paulo actually on a hot, steamy night, quite appropriately.
Yeah, just like now. Just like here.
Yeah.
So the drummer's Brazilian though, right?
Yeah, he is.
Yeah. Great, good. And so it's just the quartet, was it? Just the four of you?
Just a quartet. I mean, the album. It was Adriano Adewale's first gig, I think, with Monica. So he was doing his kind of first version of being a drummer, but just using percussion. So he'd have an upturned gourd, which he would use as the bass drum kind of thing, and then he had a pedal to do the hi-hat. And you had various other kind of
he's something else, isn't he? Yeah,
kind of thing.
Yeah.
But each part of it could fulfill the function of what a normal drum kit would do, kind of thing. So he didn't miss anything, and in terms of sensitivity, he was unbelievable. Yeah, but a couple of tracks. Ricardo Mosca on.
Fantastic. Yeah. So this album, Brian Way is. Hi, Brian. Welcome again. Brian's asked what the album is. The album is called High, H-I-H.
H-I-H.
And it's from 2008, and it's under the title of Monica Vasconcelos. So do check that out. There's a few. There's a couple of albums of hers on Spotify, I think, but you can probably get that. All good stockists. Do you have anything on your website, Steve, where they can purchase anything or get any of your stuff off there?
Mostly my stuff, I'm afraid, on the website. Yeah.
Well, that's what they want.
That's what it's for, isn't it?
Yeah. So there is a link below. So, folks, if you want to check out Steve's website, what's on your website then, Steve?
So there's links to Tie Up with Strings. There's links to an earlier kind of electronic album I did called About Time 2.
About Time 2 with a number 2.
With number 2. Yeah. Trying to be Prince or what? What's wrong with you? Anyway, yeah.
And what about your books? Where can they get your books? That's all on Amazon, is it?
They can get those. That's on Amazon, but the links are there as well. Yeah.
On the website. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So we're gonna completely change tack again now. I mean, do you want to? We should mention a couple of other people that you've worked with that we haven't got time to play. So we've mentioned Ark, of course, which we planned together. But I know you've worked with Asaf a lot as well. You've done some very interesting stuff with him. Sarah Jane Morris, you mentioned as well. Carol Grimes, you did some nice recordings with. Anyone else that people could check out if they want to hear you playing? Because I'm thinking of albums that are not. You've recorded an enormous amount, but not a lot under your own name, is it?
Just to rewind to Asaf.
Yes,
it was such an amazing project to do. He came over from Israel, and he had this music in his head, which was for power-driven guitar, power drum kit, and massive church organ. For a year, he listened to nothing but the music of Messiaen. So there was all this many multiple layers of tonality going on, but then sometimes it would be just one thing going on, so completely minimalist. It was incredible music, actually, and we managed to record it in church with a real organ, and with Asaf playing the power kit in a side room kind of thing, and the amazing Mike Outram, also in a side room kind of thing, and that trio was such fun. It was just jaw dropping at times, actually. I'd sit there. Often I had to just keep things going, kind of thing, while the other two. And I'd be thinking, blimey, I've got to concentrate here because otherwise I just get carried away in what they're doing. It's amazing. But there are 3 albums, I think, of that group, which is called The Inner Noise.
The Inner Noise, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah.
Which of course became a joke after a while, but because they're quite loud players. But there you go.
And is that? I mean, was there? And that's finished now. That project, is it? Or is it still? Yeah.
No. It's that. I doubt it would come back. Yeah.
Fantastic.
So there was Asaf. What else were we talking about?
Sarah Jane Morris.
Sarah Jane Morris. Yes. I did one tour with her, which was supporting Simply Red round Europe, back of a van for 6 weeks.
Brilliant.
That was quite an initiation. Yeah, I'd never toured before in that to that kind of level, and to sing those kind of gigs, in front of 1,000 to 10,000 people, kind of thing. And what you have to do different in order to get across
on a big stage.
On a big stage with a big audience. Yeah, 10,000 people. So it was really interesting to do, actually.
Was that a big band? Or was that just a quartet or something? Or
no, that was it was kind of guitar, keys, bass, drums, and Mornington Lockett on saxophones.
Fantastic.
The great Mornington Lockett on saxophones. Yeah.
And you mentioned also to me earlier about Sibongile Khumalo.
Khumalo, yeah. Well, kind of on the back of the British Council touring, God bless them, the British Council. And it kind of all wound down, that British Council touring, due to a kind of philosophical problem, really. But we won't go into that now. The Andy Shepherd group toured Africa, South America, Eastern Europe. But I mean, particularly places in Africa you would never go. You would never go to Malawi. You would never go to Zambia. You would never go to Zimbabwe, particularly in the troubled times that the last time we went there.
I mean, you mean to tour and play and perform?
Yeah, tour and play. Yeah.
And these
what
were
else?
so the British Council supported there was arts funding to
supported
like
these tours. Yeah,
they're kind of like cultural tours, like they're kind of American kind of things.
Cultural ambassadors, really.
Ambassadors, like Dave Brubeck was doing in the 50s.
Yeah.
Amazing. I mean, that's terribly forward thinking.
Yeah. South America, we did Ecuador, Venezuela, and Colombia.
So this was in the early 90s?
No, this is late 90s.
Late 90s again.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, still going then. Yeah.
And South Africa, and I was in South Africa, and then got introduced to Sibongile Khumalo, who's she's a big opera singer there. She was a big opera singer there, but also a world music singer and jazz singer. You know, she had the voice,
Right.
had the power to do the big operas, but also could be intimate enough to do the jazz songs. you know. Amazing voice, actually. And she came and did a couple of tours over here, and I went over there once as well. So it was really nice to get that South African connection for a bit and play that music.
So it was her music. It was South African music that you were playing, and with South African musicians, and you were kind of you were playing with those.
Yes,
those
when
guys.
I went over there, yes.
Right.
It was a kind of an English band when she came over here.
All right, I see. Yeah. Peter Gore's put a few prompts in. He said, "Don't forget Margate Jazz with Annie Whitehead."
Who could forget Margate?
Jennifer.
Annie Whitehead.
Annie Whitehead, Jennifer, Steve Lodder, and
Liam Janaki.
Liam Janaki. Yes, that's it. He's in there. Liam Janaki. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Well done, Peter. Fantastic.
Yeah. Yes. Who else? It's very hard, isn't it?
Well, of course, there's another big project that you've been involved with quite heavily, which is the Zapatistas with John Etheridge, which you not only play in, but your music you do a lot of the arranging for, don't you? And presumably does that mean transcription and writing out parts and things like that? I mean, this is
yeah, it does.
So you play the music of Frank Zappa, and there's not a lot of albums, am I right, of recordings of it? Is it just a live album, or
It's just that one Live in Leeds album.
There's one live album, yeah.
I had a listen to, and it didn't come up quite as well in terms of sound as the track I sent you, which is a BBC recording of the same band. We went into Maida Vale and recorded it there.
Fantastic.
But yeah, so John rang me up and said, how do you know about Frank Zappa? Well, I've listened to a lot. I hadn't played that much, but I've listened to a lot, kind of thing. She said, oh, well, we've got a commission from Newark Arts, Dave Broom, and would you do the arranging for it? Because I wouldn't know where to start. Yes, says I. So having been quite an avid Zappa listener for years,
right?
It was a fantastic project. It was time consuming, but no,
I bet.
It was good. Yeah. Because there were no charts at that time. I mean, the internet was up and running, but there wasn't that much on it, so you couldn't find charts or.
So you were just getting the recordings and transcribing and then arranging it for the band and for the line that you had. I mean, that's a lot of work to do, isn't it? Yeah. But I mean, if people aren't too familiar with Frank Zappa, I mean, it's famously difficult music to play, isn't it? It's well, not maybe difficult, it's not right, but very challenging as a musician to play.
It's challenging, yes.
If you're not used to that, I mean, a lot of odd times, and it's just a lot of very juxtaposition of very kind of phrases and things that are and quite long pieces, a lot of through composed things. You've got to just be on your toes the whole time, aren't you? You can't switch off for a second. It's very demanding. But
when you get involved in it, you're just telling the story. Actually, so it kind of rolls off you once you're in it.
Well, I was going to say as well, I bet it's enormous fun to play because there's a lot of humour in his music, isn't there?
Huge fun to play. Yeah, we have an absolute riot.
Yeah,
and there is a gig in September at the Pizza Express. There's a gig in September at the Pizza Express.
Off the Zappa. Oh, well, no, that's what we're here for. So, fantastic. Yeah. Oh, that's great. Yeah. That's coming up, is it? Oh, well, do check that out, folks. And presumably, where's the best place to go for that? Is it John Etheridge's website?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Yep. So if you check out John Etheridge, and if you want to hear more, John Etheridge, he was show number 1 for Buster's Virtual Jazz Club. So go back and check that out. Last September. So all the previous shows are all on my website on the link below. So if you want to check out any of the artists, quite a lot of the people we've mentioned have been on the show. So, well, look, let's play this track that you've sent, which is Big Swifty. So you say this is not from the album. There is an album which is the music of Frank Zappa, absolutely live, but this is a track that you recorded at Maida Vale for this event.
So not many people have heard this.
Not many people have heard this. We've got another little exclusive for the show.
Yeah,
Thank you, mate. I do appreciate it. Here we go then, folks. The Big Swifty. Yeah, amazing. Oh, wow. Incredible music and incredible playing there. Wow, crikey.
It's just having fun, isn't it?
It is. There's a lot of humour in there. I mean, there's so much going on. I mean, so I've got a few questions.
Oh yes.
So we were chatting a little bit, but I wanted to sort of do it on air, as it were. So what strikes me, of course, is like, was that, so you're saying that band, were you working a lot together? Because to play that music and to be that tight with it, of course, they're all supremely brilliant musicians, but
steady.
But no, come on, I mean, that's amazing, that playing. But even with that, did you rehearse a lot, or was it just that you just did a lot of playing together?
Yeah, we rehearsed a lot to begin with. To get the show on the road. Yes, we did rehearse a lot.
I can imagine. Yeah.
And then we rehearse at the sound checks. If there's a new piece.
Yeah.
We haven't had a rehearsal since the opening rehearsals.
So, well, I mean, because of, if you've got a big, well, it's not a big band, but it's a fair size, and and everybody's busy doing other things, right? So this is the problem.
Yeah.
When you get all the top guys on it.
And everybody can read, so you give them parts, that's fine. And you give them something to listen to alongside parts, and
right,
you can turn up the rehearsal and everybody's taking care of business.
Right. So
bands.
Yeah,
right.
It's good. Yeah. It's, I mean, even good sight readers, you wouldn't want to be sight reading this sort of stuff, would you? I mean, I can't imagine anybody wanting sight reading. So you get the stuff, you all kind of work on it, and then you come together, and hopefully it's like a run through, isn't it? Really, presumably.
Yes. There have been experiences with sight reading, but
crikey, yeah.
There've been also some amazing experiences with sight reading. People, should I name names?
No, well, we don't need to. I mean, only if it's there are some fiendishly brilliant sight readers, aren't there? Of course, that could sight read it.
I'm going to say it. Trevor Myers, trombone player, just extraordinary. You hadn't seen it before. All the parts were not in order, kind of thing, and it just went together. He just played not a note wrong all night. Unbelievable.
Wow.
How do you do that?
Yeah. I don't know. Sorry, I'm just jiggling your picture around. I don't know. So I've clicked something there, and you've gone a bit. So I'm sorry, folks. Apologise.
I'm starting to lean as well. Probably.
No, there we go. You're back in the minute. Sit still. I can't. It's like
central
shooting ducks or something. Right. Okay. Sorry, I pressed something and it went funny. So yeah. I mean, that is that. Phew, I can't imagine sight reading all that. That's amazing. But so one of the things that strikes me about this music is the way it just turns on like the juxtaposition of going through these different sections, and one thing leads to the next. You've obviously got these, and you've got these amazing sort of tutti phrases where everything's in unison, And I was saying, like, I love that sound where they play on all the tom-toms on the drum. You know, like that kind of real unison thing. And then it'll go into an improvised section of a solo. Was it for those solo sequences, was it like the George Russell where that's scored as well? Or because I think famously Zappa had like a lot of signals that he would give the band, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
And they were kind of doing a lot of it on the fly. Were you following that kind of?
So they're kind of conventional solo sequences, really, in a way. So there's no arrangement going through it. So you make your own arrangement, you make your own builds, and just on the spot. And then, yes, famously, as you say, Zappa had a series of signals that he would.
It was all this, wasn't it? And
reggae. There was a reggae feel one, wasn't there?
Yeah, like, where he pulled his hair.
Might have been, yeah.
That was like meant to mean dreadlocks, I think.
Yeah,
that was what somebody told me.
Yeah. But we just do a 1, 2, 3, 4 in a very English fashion.
But but the solos are open, so it's on the nod in terms of so you're cueing the next bit of the piece, right? So you have the whole arrangement, and there's like vamp sections where you're doing that on the nod.
Yeah. But I mean, the pieces do feel kind of through composed in the Russell sense, in that they go here, then they go there. I mean,
Eternal Sixpence, don't they?
Revisit to a certain extent, but not necessarily that much. But it's very developmental.
And that sound of what I love about this music as well is the sense that everyone's involved a lot. And if you've got a large ensemble, it's not like, right, we're going to play the head and then 6 people will stand around looking at their feet while everyone does a solo and then you play the head. It's like everybody, the people in and out all the time. And it's like all those resources of sounds and textures and colours it's kind of getting used all the time, and you're getting, you can't ever get bored because it never stays on one thing. It's jumping from one thing to the next and throwing all these kind of really interesting colours and combinations of sounds.
Absolutely, yeah.
And things like the vibes. There was a solo there that should we name check? We need to name check.
That's Tina Lyle.
Tina Lyle. So she's playing the vibes and she was singing like 2 octaves above it or something.
Like sort of up there somewhere kind of thing. Yeah.
And she was improvising that, right? So she's that's not a written line because
no. Yeah,
and I think that's interesting, but sometimes these lines, they intertwine, don't they, with the written parts as well. I think it's really interesting the way that all the way the music all slots together. I think it's really interesting.
Yeah. Fun band.
So John Etheridge on guitar,
Indeed.
yourself on keyboards and transcripts and arrangements.
Yeah, Rob Statham on bass. And then Shanti Jayasinghe on trumpet.
Yeah, fantastic.
And Simon Bates on tenor and soprano and flute. And Annie Whitehead
on trombone. And Mike Bradley on the drums.
On trombone. And Mike Bradley on the drums, yeah.
The wonderful Mike Bradley. Yeah, great drummer. Well, fantastic. Yeah, so folks, do check out the Zapatistas. And as you say, did you say the 606 or you said the Pizza Express?
Pizza, yeah.
Fantastic. Cool. Well, look, the time has really got away with us, and it's been great, Steve. And thanks everybody for checking in and not watching the football. I'm sure this was much more fun. You haven't even checked the score. I couldn't care less. I honestly have. There's probably few things that I have less interest in than football.
Yeah.
But there we go. That's just me.
I thank you, Buster. It's been enormous fun. Thank you.
No, thanks, mate. Thanks for coming on the show. Thanks for getting up to sharing all this wonderful music. So, folks, do check out Steve's website because there's a whole ton of stuff. I mean, your discography is enormous and your output, and you've had this incredible career working with these amazing artists, and rightly so, you're way up there with all of them, and it's just great to hear a bit of the range of what you do, because I think that's what people don't always appreciate when they come to a gig. They'll see you in one project and they don't appreciate that you. I mean, why would they, right? Why would they think that you do all this other stuff as well? Yeah. So do go to the website and check that out, folks. We're going to play out with the Trio album of another project, which is with Ben Crossland, who we've both worked with his his Ray Davies songbook thing, and Steve Waterman, my good friend on the trumpet. And this is a lovely tune. This has been going a little while, hasn't it? This is not a sort of throw together thing. You guys have worked together quite a bit, haven't you?
Yes, there's a few albums. I don't know, what is it, three albums, but we've worked in Ben's other projects as well. Steve and I have worked alongside other musicians in Ben's other projects, including a forthcoming one, actually. So there's one coming up.
Is that with the Ray Davies thing, or is that something else?
No, Solway Stories. I've got the album right. Just been released, actually. In fact, in the London Jazz News of about 2 weeks ago, it was kind of featured album of the week.
Right.
It had Jazz FM featured album of the week as well. So
great.
He's doing pretty well with it, actually. It's good.
Good. Well, he's a lovely fella. Yeah. And so this is an interesting tune. So it's piano, bass, and trumpet. So there's no drums. How do you find playing in that set up? Is that very different? Do you have to? I mean, you're filling in. You've got to do a bit more. Have you got to do more or less or what? I don't know how. Or is it kind of? How do you have to approach that playing very different?
I have to do more than I would do normally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you're in charge. The two of you are in charge of the groove, really. So.
Rhythmic, so you've got to take care of the because there's not the drums there. You've got to play a bit more rhythmically, essentially. Yeah.
Often I find myself playing kind of ostinato figures at the top of the piano or something, just to keep things ticking along.
Right.
In the same way that a hi-hat or a cymbal would, kind of thing, you know.
Right. Interesting.
That kind of idea.
And Steve's a lovely trumpet player, isn't he? He's very exciting.
It's incredible.
It's just, and he really takes it off always, doesn't he, as well?
Yeah.
Well, okay, mate. I think we better wrap it up, and we'll play out on this track. The album's called Conversations. It's when was this? I don't think I've got this one written down. It's just a recent. 2015. I've got. Does that sound about right?
That sounds about right.
And Steve Waterman on trumpet, Ben Crossland on the bass, Steve on the piano, my guess. Yeah. And this is a track called Across the Land. And the band is called Three Way. So that just leaves us to say thanks everyone for tuning in. And next week, my guest will be the saxophonist Julian Siegel. So there'll be some great music here. As always, do check out the website where you can see all the past shows. This is show number 40 now. So there's a lot of great music there for you and artists to check out. And if you have enjoyed the show and the music, then do please consider a donation. It really does make a big difference, keeps us going at the moment. We're still kind of crawling on our hands and knees through the world at the moment. So anything you can send is much appreciated. And once again, thank you to my good friend and amazing musician, Mr. Steve Lodder. Thanks, mate. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Buster.
Take care, everyone. See you soon. Take care of yourselves. This is Across the Land.